Hey, this is the Avenged 44, and this is the first of a series of videos where I will be explaining the card choices and showing you the cards that I've chosen for a Pauper Cube I am working on. I have played in I've played in several cubes, but I've never really been I don't have a sensitive amount of knowledge on the subject, but I do have some knowledge. So, if you see something that doesn't seem right, or a card doesn't seem like it would actually work very well in the cube, just let me know or just put a comment. Um, this is going to be a Pauper cube, like I said before. For you people that don't know what Pauper is, it's a format where only commons are allowed. So this is the first card in the list, Arc Lightning. It's basically free damage for free mana, split it any way you want it. So it's really good for killing like tokens and like little small 1/1s, mana dorks, stuff like that. So that's why I chose it for the cube. Aftershock. Aftershock is basically like it's whatever kind of removal you need it to be. It's a very rare card for red because it destroys a creature. It destroys a creature, which is very rare for red to do, just straight out destroy a creature. But it also gets artifacts and lands. The only bad thing is you deal free damage to yourself by doing it, but I think the payoff is much better. We have Battle Rattle Shaman. This is one of those cards that it's not really that exciting, but I think it needs to be in a thing like this because it is a 2/2 for 4, which is kind of high on the curve. But it gives a creature +2 every turn, so you can pump up this is really good on a deck like say a blue-red deck or a blue-white deck where you have a good flyer and you can just pump the flyer up extra 2 points, or unblockable creature get extra 2 points. It just works good with anything with invasion, really. Battle Rampart. This is a defender. There's a couple defenders in the red section, but I mean, obviously it can help. It can kind of keep you alive by blocking creatures. But the really important thing about this card is that it gives a creature haste. So whenever you play like a new big creature for the turn, you can just hurry up and give it haste and swing in. It makes it really good. I think it's a good card just because of the ability to be able to like throw out a big guy and just swing in. It's good. Until Rise. There's other cards that are probably better than this in the common pool. I think there's one that does 4 damage for 1 mana, but I think this card is still good enough. And the added ability to be able to do artifact instead of creature is just better because you may have artifact but you may not have a creature, or you may have a creature but you don't have artifact. So it works well. And 5 damage to the face of our player is pretty good, even for seconding 1 creature. Brimstone Volley. This is one of the newer Innistrad cards I've added to this cube list. Basically, it's just a really effective burn spell. Free mana for free damage doesn't seem that great, but you gotta remember it's almost always gonna hit for 5. Especially if you just play it after combat. You'll pretty much always hit for 5. Alright. This guy he's not really that impressive, but he's one of the cube's bigger guys, just because of the concept behind Pauper is that it's commons, and commons typically tend to be weaker creatures, or well, weaker in terms of power and toughness ratio. But this guy is pretty high on the curve, even for 6 mana. He's got flash, which is probably a really good thing about him, because he can flash him in and block I'd say a bear or something. So, he has that going for him, but he also gets a creature +4, which I think is the really good part. Because you're going to swing with a creature, your opponent decides not to block it, and then he just flashes this guy in and get an extra 4 points of damage in. It seems really good. Bloodlust. Basically, it's just a pump spell that pumps a creature by +4 attack. You can't use it as a kill spell, even though it doesn't do -4, because if creature's toughness is less than 0 or less than 1, it becomes 1. So your creature will never die from this accidentally, which is good. Chaos Charm. I really like the charms, like the charm cycles. I think they're really good. This one is I think is better than a lot of the other ones in red because it can give a creature haste, plus it can deal damage to a creature or it can destroy a wall. All of those are pretty valid abilities that except for the third. The third one may come in handy, but the other two are definitely useful. Chain Lightning. This is pretty much a corner central burn spell that you should never leave home without if you have access to it. The 2 red to copy it almost never turns up because you don't play this card if your opponent has red. I mean, you don't play this card if your opponent has open red. So, and you use it for that turn 1. Burst Lightning, another just amazing burn spell that should be in anything that you can get it into. It's 2 mana for 1 mana. It's 2 damage for 1 mana, or it's 4 damage for 5 mana, which either way is still good. Crossway Vampire is another new Innistrad edition. It's basically a Goblin Shark Cutter, just a little, in my opinion, better, even though it has an extra red, which may throw it off sometimes, make it hard to cast. But it's got a bigger body, which I think is a fair enough switch off. Cinder Pyromancer. This is basically just your normal Timmy, or is it? Yeah, Timmy. He basically just ping stuff. Well, actually, he only pings a player, but and that is kind of a bad point about this card. But the fact that you can, whenever you cast a red spell, you can untap them makes them a little bit better because you can get a couple hits in every turn, especially if you got a steady flow of creatures or spells. Chartooth Cougar. This is basically one of those. This is kind of overcalls big guys who, if you early game you just mountain cycle them for the win. I mean, to get lands. But late game you can cast them, and these are 4/4 that has fire breathing. Downhill Charge. This is one of those spells. This is one of those pitch spells where you can pitch a resource to cast it instead of paying mana cost. Those are almost always good, no matter what they do for the most part. Free spells just tend to be good. This one is a pump spell where it pumps a creature equal to the number of mountains you control. This is pretty much only good in a mono red deck, which I don't know exactly how strong mono color decks are in most cubes. I mean, obviously I'm making the cubes, I can make it as strong or weak as I want, but so far I believe that mono red would be a very strong option in my cube if you can manage to hoard all the red cards. This Devastate. This is basically a land destruction spell. It's kind of expensive on land destruction spell, but it also can wipe the board of all the weenies, the 1/1s, the tokens, and also hits a damage to each player. So it seems like a pretty good. It seems like a pretty all-around good deal. A land destruction, kill a couple creatures, and ping your opponent for 5 mana. Death Spark. This is just one of those, like, and then there's a lot of burn spells in here. There may be too many burn spells in this thing, really, honestly. But that's what red kind of does. And Death Spark is one of the weaker burn spells. It only does 1 damage, but it's reoccurable. You can at the beginning of your keep if you have a creature card. If it's directly underneath a creature card, you can pay 1 to get it back to your hand. So you can recast it many times during the course of a game. Fire Blast. Fire Blast is, it's an amazing card. It's another pitch spell. This is actually one of the better pitch spells in my opinion. The cost is kind of steep. You pay 2 mountains, but you get to deal 4 damage to a creature player. It's pretty much only really strong in mono red or a deck where you have a good supply of mountains. And also, this is one of those cards. This is a finisher card. You basically play this card when all you need to do is 4 or less damage to your opponent to win the game. You normally don't cast this and then pitch a 2 mountains and then pass the turn. It's normally not a good play to do that. Alright, Fire Snake. This is actually a card I hadn't seen until I started researching the red to find the cards to this pool. This is 5 mana for a 3/1 that whenever it dies, you get to destroy a land. It doesn't really seem that strong, but land destruction. I wanted to add enough land destruction cards to kind of go with a sub-theme land destruction, and so this guy is I'm always a big fan of creatures that do stuff, that affects on the stick, as I call it. So being able to destroy land and also have a free one body that can hit a couple times is pretty good. Emrakul's Hatcher, let's see. This is a 5-mana 3/3, which is kind of like medium on the list of Red's power toughness curve for common. But the big thing is he gives you free blockers slash mana sources, which is really good. This guy's better more in some of the more controlling style cube decks where you want to try to get out like a big flyer or like a big end game creature. Ferocious Assault. Basically 3 mana to whenever you cast a creature spell, it does 1 damage to the player. Not the most exciting card, but it can really make the difference in a long stalled out game. Frosting. Frosting is basically Machinatic, just a little bit weaker. The reason why I didn't throw Machinatic in here is because at the time I thought it was uncommon. And it was kind of confusing me because some versions are uncommon, some versions are common. So I try to stay away from cards like that have multiple rarities, because it's kind of hard to determine the actual rarity. So Frosting is still good because he hits a creature, which is really what you care about. 1 damage to the face is not really important, but 1 damage to a 1 toughness creature is usually a lot more beneficial in the long run. Fissure. Fissure is just like Aftershock in the fact that it's a rare card that destroys creatures. I mean, it's expensive for a removal spell, but it does straight up kill a creature no matter how big it is. Which is something Red normally has trouble doing. Like Red normally has trouble killing anything with toughness higher than 4, and this definitely helps you do that. Goblin Bushwhacker. Goblin Bushwhacker is basically it's kind of like a rush card. You basically, I mean, anybody that's played Standard in the last year or so knows how awesome this card is. For 2 mana, for a simple 2 red investment, you get to have all your creatures get +1 and get haste. So if you can manage to get a decent number of creatures out, this card can really destroy your opponent. Goblin Arsonist. This is another goblin, of course. He's a 1 mana goblin that's he's basically a Machinatic / Frosting whenever he dies. The only thing is, don't really get the control when you do the damage, but he does make your opponent think twice about blocking him. So a lot of times you get a couple of free hits in with him, and he basically helps. He basically just helps the mono red aggro and the red white aggro, kind of style decks. Some of the Guru Slinger. And basically, this is a 2 damage creature that does 2 damage on stick. He has Echo, which is kind of makes him a little expensive and slows your game down a little bit. But slowing yourself down by like a turn, but in order to kill a really strong creature or a creature that causes a lot of problems, it seems like a fair trade. Gorehorn Minotaurs. This is basically a 4 mana 3/3 that if you deal damage before you play it, becomes a 4 mana 5/5, which seems even better. So, swing in or shock your opponent, whatever, play this guy, all of a sudden you've got a 5/5 that your opponent has to deal with or block all day. Goblin Tunneler. This is basically he's not really that strong, I'd say, but he allows you to get a creature through your opponent's defenses no matter what your opponent's defenses are like. In a really long drawn out game, your opponent's playing has 15 blockers out. You can just keep making your little 2/2 guy unblockable every turn and eventually kill your opponent. He's also really good with creatures that draw cards when they deal damage or have any kind of effect when they deal damage that normally would not be able to get in to deal damage. The Core Heart is basically, he's a 1 mana 2/2. I mean, there's not that much you can really say about him. You have to play a creature spell to cast him, but he's still really good. The Torch. Basically, this is an X spell that can't be stopped. Well, Your opponent can counter it, but they have to pay extra 2 mana just to counter it, which makes it usually means it's uncountable. And it's basically an X spell that's common. It's hard to find X spells that are common, especially just ones of this quality. So I know, he's not very exciting looking, but he's one of those cards that you just kind of need in the queue. You know, one of those just decent bears. That, you know, bears are just they play their role in the games, especially limited. They do a lot. They help you very much in limited. And this bear can fly, which is definitely useful. Intimidator Inmate, or whatever his name is. This is a 1 mana 1/1. Whenever you play a red spell, you can pay 1. Target creature can't block. He basically allows you to, you know, keep your opponent from killing your creatures by making their best creature not be able to block. He's not really that special, but he's a 1-drop and he can help you win the game late game. This is a really strong card in its ability to whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, he gets +3 +0. So in a red deck, or even like a red-blue deck or a red-black deck that's full of instants and sorceries, you can just really make this guy big. And like, say you have a Goblin Tunneler and you activate it before you start pumping him up, it's ridiculous how much damage this guy can do if you built your deck for it. This guy is basically a artifact removal. He has echo, so it makes it really hard to you know, he has echo, so the echo will slow you down a little bit. But just being a destroyer, like a really dangerous artifact, this seems like it's worth the trade, at least in most situations. And he's a 4/1. He probably will get blocked and killed as soon as you pay the echo next turn. But you know, if he doesn't, 4 damage in the face is pretty good. The Marauders is basically the Marauders is a really good card. It's one of the better commons to come out in recent days. It's a 2 mana 3/3 that basically deals 5 damage. You know, if it gets to attack your opponent, it deals 5 damage for 2 mana. And if it doesn't, it probably gets to kill a creature and deal 2 damage. Or worst case scenario, it does 2 damage for 2 mana, which is still not that bad. Lightning Bolt. What can I say? It's Lightning Bolt. You have to have it in this type of card pool. Lava Fume Invoker. He's basically a late game like pumper. If you throw a late game, you've got a few creatures and you have a shit ton of extra mana, you can just swing in for a lot of damage. He's one of those cards you kind of need against the really slow decks to be able to keep the game going in your favor. Ringleader. It's basically a 4/4/5 that has battle cry. So if you're able to get some other creatures out, you can pump them up. And the only bad thing is he has to attack every turn. So if your opponent has a bigger creature, he will die. But I mean, in this format with being pauper, there's not going to be a lot of 4+ creatures running around unless they're being enchanted or equipped. Manic Vandal. He's basically he's just a really good artifact removal creature. He's 2/2 for 3 that kills artifacts. He's a bear that kills artifacts. I mean, he serves his purpose. Lunge. This is another card that I didn't even know existed until I started looking for red cards, and it seems really good to me. I mean, it is kind of expensive for 2 damage, but it's 2 damage to a player and 2 damage to a creature. So it's worth a try. I mean, it seems pretty decent. And it's instant speed. A lot of times, cards like this are not instant speed. 4 mana for 3/2 with first strike. It's not really that flashy or cool, but it has first strike, which is a really important ability in limited games like this that you'd be playing with this card. And it has a decently big body to it, especially in this format, where it's also small. It's also got small enough where it can be killed very easily by spells. So. Mog War Marshal. He's 2 mana for 1/1 that also gives you. It basically gives you 3 creatures for 2 mana. Or worst case scenario, he gives you 2 creatures for 2 mana. Which is, I mean, yeah. it's not that bad. Especially, I mean, they can use them as blockers. They sacrifice folder. There's a lot of options for this. Mon Clunkies. This is just a really strong guy. 3 mana for 2/2. Even if he does have to attack and block with a friend, he's still really good. And obviously, if your opponent can just kill the creature that's going to attack with it, and then basically shut your whole attack phase down. But if it doesn't happen, you do get to attack with, like, say, a 2/2 in this guy, then you're doing pretty good. Marauder of Ashes. This is basically a board wipe spell. There's not a whole lot of. There's always like a handful of board wipes or multiple damage spells in this whole red section. So I figured this was a good enough one. Obviously, they can't destroy flyers because that's like one of Red's rules. That most of its removal can't kill flyers. And you do have to have enough cards in your hand to actually kill creatures. Like, say you want to kill some 2/2s, you have to have at least 2 cards in your hand. So she is limited in how she can actually kill stuff, but she's still, she's still a mass removal for 1 mana. Well, 3 mana, but for a 1 mana investment and 2 mana next turn. Pitch Burn Devils. This is on one of the newer Innistrad cards, and to me, I just really like it. I mean, it may not be that good, but I personally like it. It's easy to splash and like a 2 or 3 color deck. It's a 3/3, which is, and this, like I said, I think I've said a couple times, in this format is pretty big actually. And it shocks, it lightning bolts somebody when it dies, or a creature, which seems really good. You can kill a 6/6 with this thing, if you block it and do the free damage. So it's really good. It seems like it would be really strong. He's a wall. He's a 3/3 wall for 2 mana. He basically helps you like a deck that's kind of slower and not really doing a lot in the early game. He's a good card for it. Like something like blue green, red green, or red blue, or red white. Something where you want to kind of build up your game plan. Throw this guy out early. He can help you out. You can probably kill a couple creatures. Most opponents are not going to want to sacrifice their early drops to try to get through a wall. Nightbird's Clutches. This is basically like it's 2 creatures can't block for 2 mana and then 4 mana to flash it back. So essentially, you get to have 2 free attacks most of the time. Because a lot of times your opponent's not, especially early game when you play this on turn 2, or well, especially early game when you play this, your opponent's not going to have more than 2 creatures they want to block with. So a lot of times they'll give you a free attack, and then sometimes they'll give you 2 free attacks, which is really essential if you're playing red, because red doesn't have a lot of reach. So if it's getting like mid game and this is all way you can win, it's still good. Pyroblast. This is basically a sideboard card. It's strong against blue, but it's not good anywhere else. I felt like I should include at least a couple of color hate cards in the certain colors that they would represent. So red always has a passion for hating blue, so it seemed like a good card to throw in. It's also really cheap to activate, so you can throw your really good red card out and then have 1 extra mana open just to ensure your opponent's not going to counter it. Prodigal Pyromancer. He's really just your essential Timmy for 3 mana Timmy. These guys really play their role in limited games, especially ones that go on for a while. So he's really what can I say? It's a Timmy. They're important. They help win games. Play a Gillipede. It's a 1/1 that has first strike, which even that by itself, a 1/1 with first strike, is still really good because it can kill like 3/1s, 5/1s, all day long. The landfall is an added bonus. It's kind of the gravy on top of the rice. It basically allows you to swing in for 3 if you play a land, and if you play multiple lands, like using like green spell. I haven't actually built the green section of this pool yet, so I don't know if I'm going to actually have cards that can get you multiple lands on a turn. I'm sure I will, but if you're able to play multiple, like say 2 lands a turn, this guy gets real big, and he probably basically has to block it or and lose a creature or get hit in the face. Searing Blaze. Searing Blaze it's kind of expensive. Like, well, 2 red's kind of hard to pull off a lot of times, and you do have to have a land drop on your turn to really make it efficient. Even one damage to the face and 1 damage to a creature is still pretty good for 2 mana. But 3 damage to the face and 3 damage to a creature is way better if you can manage it. The card does have some restrictions, but it's a nice payoff if you get it working. Rolling Thunder. This is basically one of the few, like I said, it's one of the few kind of mass removal spells in the set. It's not a true mass removal, as you have to pay X into it, and you basically have to divide it. So if your opponent has like a 1/1 and a 5/5, a 4/4 and a 3/3 or something, you're not going to be able to kill everything. Obviously, if you put like 7 men into it, but you will be able to kill a lot of stuff. So you basically good math makes this card good. This is basically obviously he's not good. He's always good in a deck that has blue and white or just one of those colors. He is a 1/1 for 1. He can. The blue ability is really what makes this guy shine. Being able to give a creature flying is really good and limited. And the white ability is not that bad either. Being able to prevent damage is still pretty decent. Especially like if that 1 damage is what is the difference between a creature dying and a creature living. But if you have access to both abilities, like playing in a white, red, blue deck, he's really good. He's a really strong kind of control-ish card that can really help you out. And that's it for the red pool. This is what I have so far. I believe it's about 50 cards. Don't quote me on that. I will be starting up on. I'll be working on a different color next. Most likely either blue or green. So those are my 2 other favorite colors. And then I will be posting these individually as I go on YouTube here. So I hope you guys actually sat through this whole thing and watched it and maybe liked it or maybe found it funny and made fun of me. I don't know, but regardless, I'll see you in the next video.